never won a game? Oh. He literally is running. You're watching me run across. You did see me run. Safety first. I look both ways. That's funny. Focus on the north. All right. We'll call to order the Clinton City Council meeting. Please stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Can we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Shemmers. Seeley.
Here.
Davis. Here. Oben.
Here.
Mussmann.
Here.
Kearns.
Here. Councilmember Mussmann.
Thank you, Your Honor. I move that we approve the minutes of the regular City Council and Committee of the Whole meeting of July 12th, 2022, and they be approved as published on July 26th, 2022, and the corrected Committee of the Whole meeting of June 28th, 2022, and they be approved as published.
July 14, 2022.
Oh, I'm sorry, July 14th, 2022.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Can we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Shemmers.
Yes.
Seeley.
Yes.
Davis.
Yes.
Oben.
Yes.
Mussmann.
Yes.
Kearns.
Yes.
We'll convene a public hearing concerning accepting bids and awarding contract for Project M-2022 28th Avenue North Pumping Station REBID. Have we heard anything in the clerk's office?
We have not, Your Honor.
Is there any citizens that are in the room or online that would like to address the public hearing? If you are online, *6 will unmute you. I can hear my echo. Any council members that would like to address the public hearing? All right, hearing none, we will close the public hearing. Councilmember Davis.
Thank you, Your Honor. We have a resolution accepting bid and awarding contract for 28th Avenue North REBID, Project M 2022. I move that it be adopted as presented.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on this? Can we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Shemmers.
Yes.
Seeley.
Yes.
Davis.
Yes.
Oben.
Yes.
Mussmann.
Yes.
Kearns.
Yes.
Hey, Stephen in the booth, can you hear an echo that we can hear out here? Can you step out of the booth real quick?
Is it maybe the speakers on the tower?
Yeah. Can you see if it's the speakers that are with that computer there? Bingo.
Perfect.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. All right, we'll convene a public hearing concerning accepting bids and awarding contract for Riverview Skate Park Improvements Project. Have we heard anything in the clerk's office?
No, we have not, Your Honor.
Is there any citizens or online or in the room that would like to address the public hearing? Any council members that would like to address the public hearing?
Well, what do we do now? That's a big, what's the plan?
Josh Eggers, Parks and Rec Director.
Mayor, Council, Josh Eggers, Parks and Recreation Director. I equally share your guys' disappointment with the pricing that came in, considering that we solicited a company to help create the cost for a project of this nature. So once we got the bids back, which were about $300,000 over budget, I reached out to them and kind of just said, hey, what's going on with that? The gentleman was out east and he had to get with his finance officer. They bid it very conservatively. They indicated it's a very volatile market with material pricing and costs. Everything's up higher. And I said, so how do we get back to square one with the dollars that we have? Because obviously we can't make a project that's that far over budget. So talking with our Public Works Director, We're hopeful that there are things internally we can do, some of the flat work, some of the earthwork that maybe we can help kind of get that cost down. But the gentleman we worked with from Spawn Ranch is from Iowa. I think he was looking for some hometown pricing from the state of Iowa, didn't quite get the cost that they thought. So he said he's willing to go to bat for us and kind of help us circle the wagons back and revisit this concept and come up with a plan that maybe it's somewhat scaled down, but to at least get something within the budget that we had. But it was not something I was very excited when I saw those bids. I know that one of the materials they were using was some sort of some spray foam. It's tripled in cost over the last month alone.
Yeah.
But it just seems
Yeah.
like the same broken record, with everything. Every time you try to bid something out, it's higher than normal because nobody wants to hold their material costs, or they want to hold you hostage with their material costs. So
The skate park as it sat still fully intact, right?
yeah, the skate park as
Yeah.
it is. Yeah, and there's things we would look at, like maybe we do the demo, the existing equipment, keep the concrete pad. Like I said, maybe we dig the trench where the rip tracks will go and put the first like subsurface down, and then maybe they come into the finished surface. So there's things we're going to look at to try to get the dollars down to where we need to be. But there's no way we can accept this bid as it was proposed. And I was disappointed. I think he was disappointed. Their finance officer said that they were very conservative with their bidding, which is fine. I understand that, but I feel like we were kind of led maybe a little bit astray on this one as far as the overall cost of the project. So
Okay.
I share your disappointment, but we'll bring it back and we'll bring it back a better option. I promise.
Thanks, Josh.
All right. Anything else from council members for the public hearing or citizens? All right, hearing none, we will close the public hearing. Councilmember Oberon.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have a resolution rejecting all bids received for the Riverview Skate Park Improvements Project. Move this resolution be adopted as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, can we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Shimmers. Yes. Seeley.
Yes.
Davis.
Yes.
Oberon.
Yes.
Mussmann.
Yes.
Kearns.
Yes.
We'll convene a public hearing concerning disposition of city-owned property 217 19th Place. Have we heard anything in the clerk's office?
No, we have not, Your Honor.
Is there any citizens that are in the room or online that would like to address this public hearing? Any council members that would like to address the public hearing? Hearing none, we will close the public hearing. Councilmember Seeley.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have a resolution authorizing sale of 217 19th Place to Gary Tubbs for $100. I move this be adopted as read.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on this? Yeah. All right. Can we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Shimmers.
Yes.
Seeley.
Yes.
Davis.
Yes.
Oberon.
Yes.
Mussmann.
Yes.
Kearns.
Yes.
We'll convene a public hearing concerning disposition of city-owned property 303 to 307 South 3rd Street. Have we heard anything in the clerk's office?
We have not, Your Honor.
Is there any citizens that are in the room or online that would like to address this public hearing? All right, any council members that would like to address the public hearing? Hearing none, we will close the public hearing. Councilmember Kearns.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have a resolution authorizing conveyance of 303 through 307 South 3rd Street to the Downtown Clinton Self-Supported Municipal Improvement District, SMID 2. I move to be adopted as read.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Can we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Shimmers.
Yes.
Seeley.
Yes.
Davis.
Yes.
Oberon.
Yes.
Mussmann.
Yes.
Kearns.
Yes.
All right, moving to audience comment section. Did not receive any yellow cards for this part of the meeting. Is there any citizens that are here to address the council? Anyone online? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to consent agenda. Councilmember Seeley.
Thank you, Your Honor. I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented on the attachment.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion from council on the consent agenda? Nope.
6AF.
AF.
There's a lot of good stuff on here. Nothing else anybody wants to talk about? All right.
Okay. Is that it?
Well, I'll just say this, I'm not going to pull it. The conceptual design stuff for the Y is pretty awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, that's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, can we have a roll call vote on the balance of the consent agenda?
Councilmember Shemmers.
Yes.
Seeley.
Yes.
Davis.
Yes.
Oberon.
Yes.
Mussmann.
Yes.
Kearns.
Yes.
Councilmember Shimmers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have moved that we accept the claims that we received, approve and place on file claims 1, 2, and 3, all dated 7/26 of '22.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the claims? All right, can we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Shemmers.
Yes.
Seeley.
Yes.
Davis.
Yes.
Oberon.
Yes.
Mussmann.
Yes.
Kearns.
Yes.
Councilmember Davis.
Thank you, Your Honor. Have a resolution authorizing execution of consent to sell and assignment of rights and duties for 540 4th Avenue South. Move that it be adopted as presented.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on this one? All right, can we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Shemmers.
Yes.
Seeley.
Yes.
Davis.
Yes.
Oberon.
Yes.
Mussmann.
Yes.
Kearns.
Yes.
Councilmember Davis.
Thank you, Your Honor. Have a resolution approving the City of Clinton Local Road Safety Plan. I move that it be adopted as presented.
Second?
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on this?
Yes.
Councilmember Kearns?
This is regarding some of the stoplights that are going to be taken out. And when I look at the map in here, and I think it's on page, of 149, I think it's on page 65.
Ooh.
Well,
65 of the document or 65 of the PDF?
I guess I'm on 67 here. Of the document, sorry.
Oh.
It
You
looks
got
like
20 more
many of
pages
the
to go.
stoplights that we're going to consider taking out are not low risk. Jason?
The topic was streetlights, and trying to get to the page here.
I'm on page 67
Okay.
of the document.
Oh, I went too far.
Jason, what I
Wait a
said
minute.
was, it
Mine only
looks
goes
like
to
some of the
59.
streetlights that we're considering taking out are not low risk on the grid here.
Oh, you're on that map. Okay.
I'm on this map.
That is on 67, the PDF map.
Could you turn to that there? Oh, okay. So you're saying the traffic signals?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to tell what street's what, but,
Here's 9th. Avenue North, then 8th, 7th, 6th. I think you're talking about 6th Avenue North,
I think 9th is up
right here,
farther.
right here.
Yeah,
Yeah, here's 7th, so that's 9th.
yeah.
So that's 6 right there.
Too many pages in this thing.
That's 6.
Yep, the big red one.
Okay, so what exactly is the question again?
well, my concern is that are any of the streetlights that you're thinking about taking out not low risk? According to this document.
Okay, yeah, but but the traffic signals, whether or not we have a traffic signal is normally not due to just traffic safety. It's usually just to make sure that the traffic flows more efficiently. And so if a traffic signal is not necessary, it's just based on it's not needed due to traffic volumes. So there's sometimes that a traffic signal is needed for safety reasons, but the ones on 2nd Street, they're not needed for safety, just because there would be adequate sight distance. So yeah, it wouldn't really apply. I guess what I'm saying is the deciding factor on whether or not to keep a signal has very little to do with safety unless there's a good safety reason for that signal, which there is not on those intersections.
Okay.
Like just putting a traffic signal somewhere doesn't necessarily make it a safer intersection. And removing one doesn't inherently make it unsafe. It's mainly a factor of volume, unless there are other factors such as sight distance. So the purpose of this local road safety plan, which we discussed a month ago, was just to identify objectively what are some areas in town that could use improvements. And this company was fully funded by the DOT to look through every intersection in town, came up with recommendations based on that study. So it's so that we don't, so that we do have a plan moving forward instead of just putting out fires and coming up with a project one at a time.
How long is that plan good for?
It should be updated every 5 years, or so.
That was, what, 20?
This is 2020 data, but they updated it in 22 for the purposes of this. And added some of our, if you go to pages 59 and 58, added some of the work that we've done incorporated that into the document.
And Jason, I think what we're talking about too is, it's not even annotated. 6th Avenue North, which we're discussing right now, which we sent out to the business owners in the area around there, it didn't even make the chart as far as being high.
I'm not talking about that one.
Oh,
No. The downtown ones?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's hard to tell what's Second Street on here as
Second
well.
It's right here,
Yeah, right there.
Where?
right where River Drive is.
Okay.
There's not a lot of accidents downtown, and that's not expected to change.
In this area in here too, that doesn't have anything marked, that's the areas that we're looking at. The 6th Avenue North one just happens to be the first one on that list.
Right.
Most of the blips on there, in this chart, just to talk about this chart for a while, I guess a little bit, is Bluff. A lot of if you see the red dots, that's high risk factor. A lot of those are on Bluff, and a lot of those are on Mill Creek Parkway. And that's kind of where speeding and
What?
odd sight distance restrictions are.
So yeah, what are the criteria we look at in assessing an intersection's risk factor?
Well, that's in here. I don't have it right in front of me, and I'll flip to it.
Maybe that was a bad question to ask.
No, it's a good question to ask, but if you don't want me to talk forever, it's not, I guess.
No, we enjoy it when you explain things like this
geez.
to us.
I should have been. You'd have thought I would have been. You'd have thought I'd have been more prepared to talk about this. To be honest.
I was just kind of
Should have
asking
been.
generally, Jason.
No. Let's just.
Here you got,
So vehicle risk factor
Oh, okay.
on page 44.
is that this one? Is that this one, Jason?
Yeah, I think that says unsignalized intersections, but yeah, we could talk about that. So
Here you go. Unsignalized.
Oh,
unsignalized.
there was a good section, wasn't it?
That was unsignalized.
yeah, you're on
We can use the
44,
same.
right?
Yep.
So that's unsignalized intersections. So
Frequency
of
crash.
crashes, severity of crashes, crash rates, intersection skew. A lot of those intersections at Bluff are skewed, so that contributes to the high risk
Okay.
factor. Volume. So if there's no one driving on the road, it doesn't have a high risk factor. That doesn't get points for that. Speed limit, lighting, and intersection configuration. So if you add all of those up, because it's easy to come to an intersection as a engineer or anyone and say, oh, this is a dangerous, I could see where it'd be dangerous, but it's not until you consider all these factors and then add them up that you can objectively quantify which have the highest risk. And that's why, in fact, the intersection with the highest risk, though it does not have the most crash data at the intersection, is Mill Creek Parkway and 2nd Avenue. And that's a lot of it's due to the volume and the skew there. But some of these other ones you would expect, like if you just look at the top 10 unsignalized intersections, 2nd Avenue, Mill Creek Parkway, some on Manufacturing and Bluff, another one on Mill Creek Parkway, 3 more on Bluff, Highway 30 and Anamosa Road, which is out there by the Lyondell, and then Lincoln Way, 8th Avenue and 6th Street, which we've identified a plan for next year. A couple more on Mill Creek Parkway, so it's, the ones that you expect do make it to the top of the list, but then there's some other ones sprinkled in there. So it just helps us decide and plan for the next 5 years of safety improvements.
So, going back to the 6th Avenue North one,
Right.
so that one doesn't show up as far as having risk.
Even,
But then 7th is high risk. So would taking the signals out on 6th make 7th more high risk?
No, I think 7th, well,
I mean, 7th is
everything
bad,
has
period.
Everything has
Yeah.
everything you do has an effect on neighboring intersections, but taking the signal out at 6th, I don't think is going to affect 7th. 7th, I think, is high risk because there's a lot of traffic that come to the north side of the courthouse because they're coming off a bluff.
Yeah.
So it's not to say that there's not some other improvements that are warranted there.
There's also always cars parked there.
Sight distance,
and
right?
for the houses, which is, yeah.
Right. So it's an odd traffic movement to turn left onto 2nd Street from 7th Avenue.
Yeah.
Because if you're coming off a bluff and heading north, you're usually trying to get to, well, no, if you're heading north on Bluff and you haven't yet turned off on Springdale or 2nd or 4th or anything like that, and you're coming around to the east, odds are you're not going to head back south. So
Right.
there is a lot of traffic that turns left right there at certain times of the day. So it's somewhat of a high risk factor. I don't think it warrants a signal, but there's sight distance restrictions. There's other, in both directions, actually. There's oftentimes there's parked cars there.
I learned this from a longtime resident. They'll always come off a bluff. They'll take a left on 3rd. They'll go up to 9th, and then they'll come back at the 9th light to go to Wendy's. They won't go out by the courthouse and turn
Oh,
left
yeah.
on oncoming traffic.
Well, depending on the time of the day, it
Yeah,
can.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what we want to do is in 5 to 7 years, we want to look at this map again, and hopefully we've repaired those red blips at Bluff and on Mill Creek Parkway. And I don't know, I think we've started to make progress on some of those ones on 4th Street when we reduced it to 2 lanes. So that helps, but you have to look at this. We did some improvements at 13th and 11th as well, so. That's why you have to keep looking at this every few years, and we will again. It'll cost us more next time.
So that some of the work that we've done over the past 12 months is not reflected on these.
No, not on that chart, but it is to say that there is a page in there that shows that we have, it's Table 17, Intersection Improvement Tracking Summary. We've completed work at 17th Avenue and 3rd Street. This is on page 58. And that, I had a chart that I sent to these folks, but the traffic accidents on all of North 3rd Street from Main Avenue down to 17th, particularly at 17th, 19th, and Main, have drastically been reduced by that traffic safety project, which was why it was funded by the DOT in the first place. It's especially that median. There was something like over a dozen accidents the 3 years prior to that construction, and there's been like 1 since then.
Where are you at again? I'm sorry.
17th Avenue and 3rd Street.
Okay.
And that was I don't think many of I don't think, and for good reason, I don't think people were expecting to see that median pop up and have to get in the right lane. I mean, it's a real pain. And I agree with that, but we've had positive results despite that. So that's one there. And then the other one, 8th Avenue and 6th Street, that's planned for next year. And then if you go down to the signalized intersection is the 5th one, second one from the bottom. We've scheduled work at 19th, and it says 136 and 19th, but it's, it's 19th and 2nd Street to the bridge. We did some work at Central Steel Road and.
Wait,
Milk
isn't
and
that
Parkway.
intersection getting done this year?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to get done this year, but it's all fully designed.
Fiscal. It'll probably be
Yeah,
Oh.
it's been fully designed, it's planned, it needs to go out for bid. We need to figure some things out. There's 3 interesting intersections in there, but I don't want to talk about the whole thing. We got a roundabout at Manufacturing at 19th. Bluff 7th and 12th, we're going to close 12th Street from that and realign that Bluff and 7th intersection with Thorwaldson. We got a traffic safety grant for that. 67 and 9th, there's a lot of accidents there, and compared to what you would expect, there's not really, you don't see that many on a weekly basis, but compared to what you would expect for those traffic volumes. So there's some minor improvements we need to make at that intersection. I'm going up now. And then 30 and Central Steel, we just completed a project last year where we fully replaced all the signal heads with brighter LEDs with reflective back plates, and then we retimed the intersection, included left turn arrows in every direction. So you get through there slower, but it's safer. And we're planning to widen that intersection with collaborating with the DOT later next year as well. So every one of those, we've either done an improvement project or we are planning one. With the 3 remaining projects being the roundabouts on 2nd Avenue, 16th Street, and 13th Avenue North. We're having a public meeting on August 1st to discuss those. And we would apply for a Safe Streets for All grant for those if the council wanted to.
Cool. Thanks, Jason.
Question real quick. One, we're back to 6th. With all the events that come off the riverfront down there, does that not propose, is that taken in consideration? Because there's a high traffic volume after games, fireworks, all that stuff. It may not be a problem in the winter.
No, if it was a daily event, but then yeah, then it would. But it's only, I guess that, I would say that a traffic signal is not commonly installed just for special events. I mean, it's based on daily or weekly traffic volumes. So for special events, you would see, in any other community, you would typically see like police officers out there directing traffic. I don't know that it gets to that extent more than a few times per year, but you wouldn't have a signal there typically just for that reason.
Okay, then the other question is, if you, we'll say any of the intersections that you remove a light and you find out that accidents are increasing, is there the ability to put one back?
Yeah, we really look into this pretty heavily. We don't just drive through, similar to this local road safety plan, we wouldn't just drive through and then say to ourselves, I'm tired of that light. You know, it's.
No, I understand.
So,
that.
no, but
You're going by the
I was
public
just going to
studies,
say that we've removed, I think, 9 or maybe 10 traffic signals we've never had a problem with. We've removed 3 on 5th, 3 on 4th, 2 on 3rd, and a couple other ones, and we've never had a problem. It's not to say that we won't,
Right.
but I don't expect any. And the one at 7th and 2nd has been on flash forever, so I think it's better that one as a 4-way stop. And as Councilmember Kearns knows, we plan to take out 3 other ones downtown as well and leave the ones at 2nd and 5th, very likely. But so it's never good to have signals that are not warranted or justified. Just
I completely agree. Kind of piggybacking off of what he just asked, is there a way to shut that signal down at 6, throw up the 2-way stop, and see how it flows on an event, after an event,
Trial with that?
before they get removed?
yeah, and we can do that. When's the, I don't know
When's the next? I mean, it just
Like a
be
huge
next
event?
well, I'm just thinking next couple games or something.
Oh,
like
yeah.
that. Yeah.
a 2-way stop.
Right? Isn't that your plan? It'll just be a 2-way stop. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm trying to think how that would work.
Well,
I
we
know
kind
that-
of you kind of just had some temporary covers over the one on 2nd
Right.
Avenue and then had stop signs up. I'm
Right.
thinking the same thing, and then we can see what actually happens after the event, just to be sure before they're gone.
And then we got tailgate and tall boys.
We talked to the DOT about
That
it.
won't be a concern.
Now that road will be closed.
Yeah, that I figured that road will be right.
Yeah, that won't
Closed
yeah.
for that.
Yeah.
I truthfully do not think that it will be a problem, but I'm trying to think on my feet here about how we would best go
Well, you don't have
about
to answer
trying
right
it
now,
out.
Jason.
Right.
Maybe
What we did plan on
think
doing
about it a
was
little
putting a
bit.
4-way stop up temporarily, because a 2-way stop temporarily is really kind of hard to maintain and manage. With the signals there and they're covered up, I think people are going to be confused. So I talked.
Second evidence that we did the 4-way stop.
We,
Oh,
We
yeah,
confused
yeah.
some people because once we removed the stop signs and removed the lights, they were
Yeah.
still coming down 4th and wanting to stop.
Yeah.
So what we had
It
planned.
may not be an option. I just thought I'd ask.
Yeah.
What we had planned to do was this. We planned to, we talked to the DOT about this, they concurred, and some of it was their idea, was for a couple of weeks before the signal is to come down, we will have it on flash, we will have 4-way stops out, it's like temporary stop signs for 2nd Street and the permanent ones installed on 6th Avenue, but everything will be flashing red, and then there'll be message boards in advance that say signal to come out on August 31st. And then kind of on August 31st, it's just remove the signals, remove the stop signs, and that's the day that the change happens. No, it's not funny, I guess, but it is.
It goes live.
It goes live. I think everyone would get nervous on that day that something would happen, but Well, I guess in the middle of the week like that, there's not a lot of side street traffic. I don't expect any problems with it.
Just thinking off the top of my head, can you do flashing yellow on 2nd Street with the reds on the side on 6th, flashing red?
And then see how it flows.
Because there's some places, if you go through somewhere at night, they
Well, I can't
switch
have
them
a
to
flashing red.
yellows.
I can't have a flashing red on the side street.
Or you put a
because then
stop
people
sign.
are going to think that it's a four-way stop.
True.
They're going to stop
True.
and then, so I think you have to have a flashing red all the way around for a while.
Okay.
And
Can I have a
then,
flashing yellow with a two-way? You should think about this. We'll talk
No,
later.
he just said no.
yeah, I think it has to be something typical.
Sure.
So the only time I'm ever worried about things like this is the exact time that it happens. Like, there's people out there taking those signals down, so I think we leave some traffic control up, kind of, so that people are looking and aware of their situation for a few days afterwards. I think that's the best we can do. And then I'll take a look at the event schedule, see if I can come up with something with the police. I don't want to, I know they're busy, but see if I can talk to
And
them.
you guys know this too, is if you go down, and I'm always down there walking, and you watch the traffic flow from 9th Avenue North coming south, there's more traffic turning in to go to McDonald's and Dairy Queen there than there actually that turns on 6th Avenue North. You can watch it from the courthouse, actually. If you watch, it's happening all the time, and they gun it because they want to get in the drive-through. Where over here, it's like half the, it's kind of interesting.
There's actually more accidents,
Yep.
On 2nd Street, the most accidents we have there in that, 10-block radius.
8th Avenue North.
Is 8th Avenue North.
Yep.
All right.
8th Avenue North.
Thanks,
Shoot
Jason.
in.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks.
Between McDonald's and
Thank you.
fair enough. Thank you. Where am I at here? Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? All right. Can we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Shemmers.
Yes.
Seeley.
Yes.
Davis.
Yes.
Oberon.
Yes.
Mussmann.
Yes.
Kearns.
Yes.
Councilmember Shemmers.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have a resolution approving and authorizing execution of Amendment Number 1 to the agreement for private development by and between the City of Clinton and Cottage Bluff LLC. I move the resolution be adopted as read.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on this? That looks different.
Yeah, we did a 180 here.
Yeah. We have Dr. Ailes here. Chris.
It has been a challenge. This change is driven by delays in complying with the state's 106 review through SHPO. At great expense, we commissioned a couple of, actually 3 archaeological studies of the site, documented what's there. But those delays put us in a position where we can no longer complete the original designed project by the statutory completion date of December of '23. If we're not finished by December of '23, we lose all of our funding. And there is no option. It's just not a risk we can take to get out there and have, $6, $7, $8, $9 million spent and then find out in November, December of '23, we're not going to get any of the funding that we expected. We've talked to our contractor, we've talked to the state, and the contractor believes that by simplifying the design and reducing the number of pads down to one large pad for this building, that we can get in there and get the concrete footings and foundations and slab poured yet this year. That way we don't have to worry about a wet spring. The fear is if we have to worry about getting the concrete in the spring and wait until the summer, we'll never get to any buildings done by December. So we're confident that we can get the site work done this year and then the building erected next year with this design. There's some trade-offs. There are pros and cons. Some people like to drive right up to your front door. Others like to be inside. They don't have to go outside in 20 below zero weather in the winter to get to the community building. It will have an elevator to address the multi-floor issue in lieu of private patios will have balconies. So we've tried to keep the balance equal from an amenity perspective. And again, the Iowa Finance Authority has preliminarily approved the direction that we're headed, and we are prepared to proceed.
You'll be out there with your shovel tomorrow, huh?
Well, they're out there taking the trees down today.
All right, all right. I didn't see that. Good,
We didn't announce it.
good. Okay.
And they will start the demolition soon, and yes, we'll be out there working.
Perfect.
And would plan to close fairly soon.
Good.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Any questions or discussion? All right, can we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Shimmers.
Yes.
Seeley.
Yes.
Davis.
Yes.
Oberon.
Yes.
Mussmann.
Yes.
Kearns.
Yes.
Councilmember Mussmann. Thanks,
you.
Chris.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have a resolution appointing UMB Bank N.A. of West Des Moines, Iowa, to serve as paying agent, note registrar, and transfer agent, approving the paying agent and note registrar and transfer agent agreement, and authorizing the execution of the agreement. I move that this be adopted as read.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Can we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Shimmers.
Yes.
Seeley.
Yes.
Davis.
Yes.
Oberon.
Yes.
Mussmann.
Yes.
Kearns.
Yes.
Councilmember Kearns.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have a resolution approving and authorizing a form of loan agreement and authorizing and providing for the issuance of $9,260,000 general obligation capital loan notes, Series 2022A, and levying a tax to pay said notes, approval of the tax exemption certificate and continuing disclosure certificate. Move it be adopted as read.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on this? Can we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Shimmers.
Yes.
Seeley.
Yes.
Davis.
Yes.
Oberon.
Yes.
Mussmann.
Yes.
Kearns.
Yes.
Councilmember Mussmann.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have a resolution approving an extension to the 2019-2022 agreement between the City of Clinton and the Clinton Humane Society. I move that it be adopted as read.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on this? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Madison. Actually, Amber's here, but, well, I was going to have you talk, but unless you want to. But we did this through December, but it was probably only going to take us 60 days. I did talk to Mayor Madison before the meeting. We're going to figure out, because Nancy's no longer with us, if somebody will fill in the interim. I think we're super close to be able to notch out an agreement and move forward with Clinton Humane Society.
We agreed to 60 days, not December.
Yeah, well, this is for them to approve for me. Yep.
Okay.
You guys want it hashed out within 60 days?
Yes.
That's correct. Okay. All right. Anything else?
Lots.
Okay.
All right. Any other discussion?
No.
So does it have to reflect 60 days on there?
No, this is for us, just in case. But I can always come back to you and get it done earlier.
When will the next meeting be?
August 15th. Or our meetings, or for the?
No,
Humane Society?
for the Humane Society.
August 15th.
August 15th.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
All right. Any other discussion?
I think Cody's going to go.
Not just.
All right. Can we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Shimmers.
Yes.
Seeley.
Yes.
Davis.
Yes.
Oberon.
Yes.
Mussmann.
Yes.
Kearns.
Yes.
Councilmember Shimmers.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have an ordinance for the second consideration.
Please read the title.
An ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances of the City of Clinton, Iowa by amending provisions pertaining to rental property maintenance requirements.
Do we have a second?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second.
Right.
That's fine.
I guess I could have seconded it.
You don't have to, though. Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? You're fine.
I have a question,
Okay.
and I think I need Pat to answer the question.
Okay.
Pat, can you explain to the council 15513K Section 2. And again, need to understand what this even means, because this is an entirely new section, council members.
So,
I'm sorry, I should have gave you a warning.
K2, correct? Two,
Correct.
right?
Number
You're talking
2.
about- That's what we worked on during the week.
No, that's G.
No, that's
for the
G
next
on
one.
the next one. This
Yeah,
is,
this is actually not a new paragraph. This has been there before, so.
155.13 K2 is the question.
yes. And I say new as it's not in our current code. So it was added in at some point. And I don't even understand what it means and how it's applicable to the situation.
It's saying that, what it's saying is that if there's a continuing use that is not up to the standard, which is currently allowed because for example, the International Property Maintenance Code wouldn't be brought to bear on it because it's already been built and it's already in compliant. It's not in compliance now.
So it's
but it
not,
would have been at the time it was built. It's saying that if you're going to change to a new, from one zoning classification to another, that would imply that, like, for example, you're going from R1 to, say, R4. So in other words, it's going to become a rental property and it's going to be under the R4 classification instead of, I think that's what that's implying. That's what it looks like to me. I did not draft that section, but that's how I read it.
well, yeah, I'm still confused. Like, so to rezone a property is a very lengthy process, right?
Yeah.
So-
I think it goes
We
along
went
with, I guess
r-
the way I read it is it goes, so G talks about where your permit lapses, right?
Yep.
And so it's another attempt to sort of reset the requirement. Making, in other words, it's saying it makes sense that if you're going to make that type of dramatic shift in the use of your property, that at that time you ought to go back, see what the property, it took out hardwired interconnected, right? That's lined out because it's been the will of the council not to include that for non-new construction, right?
I just don't even see a
And it just says we go back to current code standards at that point. I think that's what that's saying. That's how I read it.
I don't even how would a real life situation, how would this apply to a real life situation? Like, I can't,
It would be like, for instance, let's say you're R1 and let's say you own a rental house,
okay.
or maybe it's just a house that you lived in, but now you're not anymore, and you want to turn it into a multi-unit type house.
Okay.
That would require a zoning change because you're changing from R1 to something else.
But the applicability of that
At
is
that point, when
based,
you're going to do that kind of construction, I guess what that's contemplating is now you're going to go turn it into a multi-unit. So we're gonna make you observe the code requirements, standards and requirements for a rental property pursuant to this chapter.
it'd be, the zoning isn't what triggers modifications to the property to take place. It's the change in use which triggers that, which is already in the code.
Yeah.
So what,
The wording, well, zoning is a use. That's what zoning is.
well, zoning just permits or allows or disallows a use, right?
Right.
So
Each zoning-
the city of Clinton wouldn't allow a property's use to change without that going through the proper channels, right? And if the property's use is changed, the zoning or the building codes we follow say that that property would have to be brought up to code. So I guess this seems redundant and unnecessary.
Well, we could use one that's more near and dear to us. So let's talk about the building next to Manny's Whistle Stop.
Okay.
That is a C2 commercial entity
yep,
that
yep.
now, let's say the homeowners didn't buy it, but they bought it to be a rental.
Yep.
That would have to be rezoned.
Yeah, now.
That's
but-
an example.
Yep, exactly, but that's a zoning issue for that property. A change in use changes that's a unique situation there, because that was a demo house, right? You know what I mean?
Well, demonstration, yes, not
Yeah.
a demo house.
Yeah. I went there too.
I know.
But,
Demo.
Pat, I don't see how this section makes any sense with anything, because the zoning of the property and the requirement for code updates are two separate issues.
It's tying, right, it's tying the
No, it's not.
change in zoning.
It's muddying the water. We're sitting here and we're not sure.
What's adding a trigger point to the code. It says you've got to follow the code if you're changing your zoning.
But our codes already say if you change the use of a property, you have to bring it up to code. Doesn't matter what the zoning is. If you change the use of a property, you got to bring it up to
And
code.
maybe that's true.
Yeah.
This is just
But is it nothing more than a play on words? Because if you change the zoning or to change the use, isn't that the same thing?
It is, because.
Not
what this is,
necessarily.
It's a bright line, because the zoning change from, say, R1 to R3, you've reached a certain point of change. That's about as bright line of change as I can imagine.
Well,
At
could
that
you
point,
change
so-
the zoning on the property without changing any physical characteristics of the property?
I don't think so, no.
Well, why couldn't I? If I wanted my house rezoned R2 and it's zoned R1C right now, I could go through that process and not change anything on my house. Now it'd be subject to approval.
Yeah,
Right.
the zoning board is going to want to
Yep.
know.
So-
They're not going to grant that, I mean, there's not going to be a recommendation to council to change it to R2 unless you prove that.
Well, let's
you are
say
changing
a
the use.
property adjoining me is already R2.
Well, I suppose I can imagine a circumstance where Cody Seeley would say, I want this to be R2 because I'm going to change the use, and I want the approval first before I do it.
Okay, so that's perfect. So the two items are completely separate issues, right? So let's say I go to the city of Clinton, say, I want to rezone my single-family dwelling to R2. And they say, well, why? Well, because the neighboring property zoned R2, and I just think I want it that way. It's multifamily. Okay. And then they're like, okay, well, it's not spot zoning. Perfect. Now, the way this reads, just because I rezoned my house, even though I'm not planning on changing anything, I'd have to bring it up to code. Is that correct?
Theoretically, that's how it reads,
Yeah,
right?
yep.
I don't know why
So
you have to
then,
do that.
well, no. So now I've rezoned my property, and now a year later, I want to convert it into a 2-unit. Okay? I want to take my single-family house and convert it into a 2-unit 1 year later. I would then, the codes we've adopted would say, oh, well, that's fine. You're changing the use of the property, so now you have to meet the code requirements for the change in the use. And that's why I'm saying they're two separate. They don't intertwine with each other. Like there's no applicability of this to this ordinance.
Okay, that's one way to interpret it.
Because you can do them both separately.
I mean, theoretically, you could change it to R2, and if the recommendation came to council that it should be R2 because his intent is to try to turn it into a duplex, right? Multifamily duplex.
Mm-hmm.
And they granted that.
Mm-hmm.
At the point where you start doing your construction to turn it into a duplex, you wouldn't hardwire, because that's not what this is requiring, but you would do whatever the code requires for smoke detection.
Yep. For the change in the use. Yep.
In the change in the use, right. It just really gets at it a different way by saying it's the zoning classification has changed. So when that contemplated use changes because of the zoning change, then you would do that upgrade. I think that's what it's saying.
Who wrote this?
Doug Herman from
Doug.
Lynch, Dallas.
Doug wrote it. Do you know why it was added?
Because we wanted to make sure we covered both those. Even though we have a lot of codes that do some overlapping, but this way you can be very direct on when you get ready to do something on your property, and it's very clear and precise where that is. And it also had, before we lined through approved, hardwired, interconnected, because remember, we started this paragraph, if we want to get to the crux of this, where it says converted to single, two-family, and multifamily. Someone took advantage of the fact it only said single, and then got us to where we are today, when we could have just simply said dwelling units, which the International Residential Code calls for.
Well, we need to verify all that information as part of this too.
And that has been verified. And that's the Scribner's error we talked about, which I sent to you in an email, that goes back to, you were already in violation with your property because, and the International Residential Code, it calls for dwelling units. So just as you installed it for your single-family rental, you should have done it for the dual family too.
Well, council members, since Matt brings this up, I don't think this should be voted on until you ask some very important questions about how this all came about, because it's a significant policy change that's never been discussed by the council.
The significant policy change of what? I guess I'm lost on that one. Because we took out the approved hardwired interconnected.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not changing the policy. We're just going with the code right now that says smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors.
Yeah, this ties directly into the next ordinance you're going to be updating.
Yep, this is for rental properties, and the next one we're going to go into is smoke detectors. Yep. And we did the Scribner's error because where I've highlighted this, it only said single.
Yep.
Even though in the International Residential Code, under the International Property Maintenance Code, which was adopted by the council, it refers to all three of those as dwelling units, period.
The International Property Maintenance Code doesn't require what the city of Clinton requires, and it may refer to it as dwelling units. The original HCAP plan didn't make any mention of multifamily properties or two-unit properties. And the HCAP plan stated that a single-family dwelling going from owner-occupied to tenant-occupied had to have hardwired smoke alarms. Otherwise, the requirement was not put in place for existing two or multiple unit properties. And then somewhere along the line, it was decided to apply that to all properties, and it was never discussed by the city council. So that's why I say it needs a little more work.
Look confused.
I am.
So am I.
Because
Okay.
I'm looking at, there's two things that are reflected, I think, in this 155. One is going from technically one family, two family, multifamily.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing is taking out the approved hardwired interconnected smoke detectors. That's taking that out. That was in the one that we passed last meeting. Is that correct?
They do intertwine. I think the biggest, to try to make it simple, if I'm right, the biggest thing is the update on the ordinance that we're looking at currently is previously it said being converted to single, and it did not say two-family or multifamily rentals. So
It
we're
referred to owner occupied to a
where
rental.
the debate and the discussion should be whether or not you want two-family, multifamily in the ordinance. Is that correct?
It was determined to make a lot of sense to say if you're making physical changes, at that point you should put whatever smoke detectors are required at that point. That's all it is. And because it didn't make sense to just go from owner occupied to, if you just rent your house out, and that's the only situation that makes a lot less sense to me than changing the zoning classification, because if you're changing the zoning classification, you're probably making physical changes.
Yeah. Which is covered by code,
So I
right?
think what Doug was thinking when he drafted this language is he's taking care of that. He's just making it universally applicable. If you're going to change the zoning classification entirely,
Well-
you're making enough change in the use that it requires a change in the zoning classification, i.e., you're going from a whole house to 2 units or 2 units to 4. At that point, makes sense. Make sure
Yep.
your smoke alarms are to code.
I agree.
It doesn't say hardwired interconnected, because I don't think that's what's required. That doesn't actually describe what
Well,
the codes we've adopted say. That's one option to comply, but you can also use the partially hardwired Matt was describing at the last meeting, where part of it's that's just what the state requires, and so you do that, whatever that is.
Well, at the end of the day,
We're trying not to change the requirements for smoke detectors, because there's a lot of dissent about that idea, and it's beyond code requirements.
this cleans up, so when people and the landlords that are in the audience can read this, it shows all those single, two-family, multifamily. Now direct yourself to 152.02 or go to Iowa Code 661, which that's where it spells it out. We're not directing anything above and beyond what the International Residential Code or the International Building Code. What we're doing is including all, being inclusive to include single, two-family, multifamily. I was just giving you a parallel that the way that the International Residential Code does it is they actually use dwelling units. We're pole voting over, baby little mountains here. This cleans everything up, directs you back to where you need to go, which is the International Residential Code or the Building Code, because when you're talking about a single-family rental, that directs you to the International Residential Code. When you're talking about the dual or multi, that takes you to the International Building Code. Those are two distinct areas you go to. So this cleans it up, and we hit on all those cylinders. And if for whatever reason we have a strange zoning thing comes up, it includes that as well.
So this
Well, and it-
changes the policy, Pat, and here's why. Any converted to single, two-family, or multifamily residential that has previously been a rental property and has not been in a rental property pursuant to this chapter for a period of 365 days. That is new. So if a building becomes vacant for a period of time, it no longer has the ability to continue its use without being treated as new construction, because this then ties into the next section you're updating. So as I said before, the city of Clinton never had any of this verbiage that pertained to existing properties that were used as rental properties. They only had the verbiage for it that applied it to a single-family owner-occupied dwelling going to a tenant-occupied property. So the 365 days is new. The addition of two and multifamily is new. And
The removing hardwire interconnected is new. Thank you very much.
Yep, but that doesn't alleviate the requirement because of Section G on the next ordinance. So we kind of made some edits here to make it appear as such, and then applied it on the next ordinance.
But that's the next discussion.
Yeah.
So we need to get through this discussion first.
Yeah, I don't think so, because I think G is also amended to reflect, it just refers back to the requirements that are already approved.
Well,
In other words, no change from the property maintenance code or.
yes, G is requiring above and beyond what is required by the property
Well,
maintenance code.
it does create a trigger point where we're going to apply it. That's what G does. But it doesn't change what's required. It just changes when you have to upgrade to it. So, and that's a council decision, whether you want to require that or not.
And that's super flexible, because if you're going to get a property that say is in probate and it takes 8 to 12 months, we're going to work with whatever landlord that needs to fix that. So if it's going to take them 18 months to bring that up to code, we're going to work with them. But we thought putting a placeholder in there, 365 days into adequate time, but also if something's been left off the rental, what else needs to be done to it before it's been brought back up to code. And regardless, though, is you're going to have to do what in that time period? If you're going to bring it back as a rental, what do you got to go do, Councilmember Seeley?
What do you mean?
What are you going to be required for you to go do to bring that up to make it a rental? What do you have to get from BNS?
Oh, a certificate.
We have to get a permit.
Yeah.
Permit triggers something completely different within the International Residential Code.
Yep. All I'm saying, guys, is this is presented as a Scrivener's error. It's a policy change. It was never discussed by the council, and it should not be presented this way, and it is a very large material change. And that's the truth of the matter.
I think the large material change is that we're going back to code and we're removing the hardwire and interconnected.
We're close to actually following the codes, which I think is great. But we have these little things in here that keep superseding codes, which, you know, aren't quite making a whole lot of sense. But this needs more consideration, and I guess it's second reading, so there's one more. But there's some investigating that needs done, because what I'm telling you is I'm telling you, I've done a lot of digging, and it's happy to show you.
Okay.
Will that include meeting with our fire chief? Because I don't think we met with him yet.
I've gotten
During your digging.
information from Joel, quite a bit. I
So-
appreciate his information.
Can I ask
Yes.
the attorney?
Go ahead.
He's having a sidebar.
Pat. Councilmember Kearns has a question.
No, go ahead. Well, you can finish yours if you need.
Go ahead. Bill
I'm
was
just
asking
wondering,
a
is this
question at the
truly,
same time.
my question is this truly a Scrivener's error? Is it 7H? Is it a Scrivener's error?
So, my understanding of the circumstance was that nobody could figure out why, when it was drafted in the first place, why multifamily was not included. So there was an assumption that it was a Scrivener's error, that it wasn't. Because I think the chief looked at that and thought, that doesn't make sense to me, why that would be left out. Then Councilmember Seeley, in a private conversation I had with him at one point, said there may be reasons why it was left out. And he had some cogent argument that it could have been. So I don't think the staff knows for sure if it was a Scrivener's error or if Councilmember Seeley's correct. But I don't think it matters either why it was left out. I think what you have before you as the council is determine whether you want that policy or not. I mean, it does change things, because if the use changes to multifamily, then it affects you.
Well,
Affects the public when they have to, the landlord has to determine, am I going to do that? And if they do, then do I need to look at my smoke alarms and see if they're compliant at that point? And that is a change.
It also
Everybody's correct
impacts
when they say-
properties merely on the fact that they are vacant for a period of time.
That-
You know,
that too.
and there may be a time limit that is applicable to the situation, but I can tell you when, you know, we see it all the time, we have lots of vacant properties, a year is not a long time.
And one thing I will say is, you know, as an attorney, I see this all the time. I see estates that take a long time to close. It may make sense for the council to edit this, to have a longer period of time to account for that, because somebody may not want to, it may be unfair to a person that's still intending to keep using it in the same way, when it takes them longer than a year to get it back on the market.
How long is a rental certificate good for? Like, if I get a rental certificate on a property today, how long is it good
2
for?
years.
2 years? Maybe that's your number to put in there.
You know,
It's 2 years instead of 1 year.
He wants 0.
If it didn't, for a whole cycle, it was vacant or whatever. I don't know, just throwing that out there.
If you all tie this back to the codes we keep talking about that we've adopted, a change in occupancy does not, a change in occupancy status doesn't trigger a code change, from my understanding. It's a change in use that triggers a code change, right? So office building to restaurant or bar or, something like that, a single family to a duplex. Those are changes in use. They change the physical characteristics of the building and they trigger code requirements. Properties are constantly undergoing occupancy changes. I mean, you buy a house, you move in, you sell it, you move out. It may be vacant for a month while you're moving before someone else moves in. A tenant lives there, a tenant moves out, a new tenant moves in. The owner moves back in, a tenant now moves in. The occupancy status is constantly changing. And this is triggering code requirements based on occupancy status and not use. And it is another piece that goes far beyond all the codes we've adopted.
Council Joe Axon, Fire Chief. Purpose also changes the code requirements. It's not just use, it's also the purpose of the building. So if you're taking a single family, and you're making a rental, you're changing the purpose of the building. You are no longer physically living there, you are renting that out. Changes the purpose, changes the use of the building.
What section is that in, Joel?
I don't have that in front of me right now, but I will get it to you.
To the council? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So if a purpose changes the code requirements, like how are other cities not that have adopted all these codes? Anyhow, council members, I just wanted to point these things out because I think this is important.
The only comment I have is I think that the zoning change was the bright line, easy, interpretive way to do it. I think that's what
I
Doug
think
was
a little
thinking.
more clarification on
'Cause
the
you're-
actual intent of that.
That is the type of use that we're concerned with. You're when a zoning classification changes, that's the type of use we're talking about, not other types of minor changes or whatever to the structure. We want to make it clear to I think the idea was to make it clear to landlords, you go in and do a bunch of improvements, that's fine. You're not going to be, nobody's going to ask you to, do anything at all with your smoke detectors just because you're putting in new countertops and doing a bunch of other stuff in there. It's only when you're, that's what that's referring to. It's trying to capture that major change in use, I think. I think that's what the idea was, and it would be easy to follow. If you were an owner, you'd know.
Are you referring to the zoning section?
Yeah, K2, I think, is what I'm talking about here. But now, the 365-day consecutive days, that's not based on changing in use. That's based on a lapse, right? Which is the next the next section. There are two different things going on at the same time, right?
All right. Any other discussion from council? Questions?
Yeah, I do have a question. Councilman Seeley, what you saying occupancy, what occupancy change you're talking about? Because I'm not seeing.
Well,
where
to
you
me,
have this
occupancy
at.
changes or occupancy statuses are like tenant occupied, owner
Right, but I'm
occupied,
talking about in
vacant.
the ordinance.
Oh, so the 365-day requirement, and then it has to be brought up to code, is required just merely because the property becomes vacant.
Right.
Or changes that occupancy status, not because the property's use changes. Does that make sense?
No.
Okay. What? Am I explaining it bad?
Councilmember Davis, are you asking about the 365-day
Well,
portion?
he said that change of occupancy should not be any reason for to make these changes or.
That's what, yeah, that's what from my understanding, I'll be curious to see what Chief Atkinson has, but, just simply because the property becomes vacant for a period of time, let's say nothing changes at it, there's no requirement there would be, this requires you to now bring it up to code.
Because of 365 days
Because
have
of
lapsed, you're saying.
because it lapsed through,
there's
not
no
because the actual building changed itself, just because somebody
Usage.
didn't live there
It's just-
for 365 days.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. Councilmember Oberon.
The piece that I see here that maybe might add a little bit is the property has not been permitted as a rental property pursuant to this chapter for 365 days. So if it doesn't have a rental certificate, there you go, I'm looking for the right word, a rental certificate, isn't that where it comes into play with this piece here for the 365 days? Because it's looking like a particular structure might be vacant for a year, but it still has a rental certificate, doesn't it?
Well, could or could not, yeah.
Okay.
What?
So you suggesting if they still did have one, then maybe we can go out
Then
another year?
then it's not a change in purpose, it's not a change in use, it still has a
I guess
certificate. And that's how I read at least K, the first.
I agree. That's
first
a good
one.
interpretation. But that is still up for interpretation.
But it says has not been permitted as a rental
Right.
property for that time frame.
Right, it's just saying that if you own the property and it's been dormant you have not gotten your license renewed and it sits there for more than 365 days, then when it comes back on the market and you want to get licensed, you have to
Bring it
make sure
forward, yeah.
the smoke alarms you're using are compliant.
Right.
And that may make sense,
Yeah,
since we've been arguing to make that a longer period of time.
The codes, yeah. Which one requires something like this? You know, this applies to a lot of buildings, right? I mean, downtown buildings, if they have rental units.
Well, I'm gonna be honest, I agree with the 365, or at least something has to change, because even though you're saying that no particular usage, the usage hasn't changed, we still was rental property before at the 365 days. But I still agree with it, because a lot of things still take place. You don't know who's been in that house or the apartment or whatever, and things just dry up. Just a lot of stuff take place. Even 12 months, it's still a lot of things happen to the property. Plus, we can go ahead and get it up to code anyway.
It depends on the feasibility of the situation, right?
Not really. Why? If you're gonna be a landlord, you should want to have nice property anyway,
Yeah.
and you should want to have it up to code.
Well, yeah, and code would say that none of this would be required.
Well, aren't we still trying to get better the smoke detectors or the smoke alarms up, right? Instead
Yeah,
of
and
just
that's-
using,
that's the
yeah,
next
so that
section.
could,
Yeah.
so that would help get that old stuff out, get some new stuff in.
Yeah, it just depends on what you want to, how you want to treat it.
Well, I understand. I understand.
Yeah.
Any other discussion? You look like you have something. No?
Not yet. I have my little sidebar throughout all this with
Okay.
our attorney.
One suggestion that I might make is that it doesn't sound like there's any opposition to making that period of time longer on this council. I haven't heard anybody say that. So whatever you choose to do, whether you should amend it now to reflect whatever time frame you want, and then if Cody, wants to table it, we can still do that, but I think that at a minimum is, everybody's agreed on that period of time should be longer. I'd suggest 2 years, just because I know about the probate system, and I think it makes sense. Some of the arguments Cody made actually make some sense. And we have a market that, I didn't mean to imply that they don't usually make sense. They do make sense. We have a market in Clinton where things can sit vacant, and if we can give landlords an opportunity to get a new permit and do it without having undue cost, we maybe we should do that. just because it's difficult enough to get housing, so.
Yeah. Okay. Is there any
So what I'm saying
motions
is
or an
I think you
amendment
could amend
on?
it first and then decide whether you want to go forward with it today or table it for further discussion or what you want to do.
Well, I would make both motions if I can. I would make the motion to take it to 2 years. And I also
Okay.
would like to see what comes out of the discussion, so I would motion to move it to the next council meeting.
Discussion with the
As far as the occupancy versus use
The
versus.
purpose?
Purpose.
Where, that one?
Yes.
Right. Okay, so we got to deal with these motions separately. So the first motion would be to amend the 365 days to 2 years. I'm not going to do public math. Is that correct? I know. I was just being silly. 670. Thanks, Stephen. Did you use your calculator back there?
That's not
I see 730.
Whatever. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You agreed.
I did agree. I figured he was on the calculator back there.
finance man.
Anyway. Hey, man. Get a car loan for me.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, that's the motion. Do we have a second? Okay, we have a motion and a second on that. Now, would you like to make that motion to postpone this
I would.
vote until the next council meeting for the second consideration?
Well, are you gonna vote on that first?
Do we need to vote on the
You
amendment
got a roll
first?
call vote on the amendment first.
Okay, I just didn't want to.
Right.
Okay, so I'll offer up, is there any discussion on the amendment? Okay, can we have roll call on the amendment, please?
Councilmember Shevers.
Yes.
Seeley.
Abstain.
Davis.
Yes.
Oben.
Yes.
Mussmann.
Yes.
Kearns.
Yes.
Okay, so the amendment passes to change that to the two-year mark. Okay, Now.
I would make a motion to hold till next council meeting, table it,
okay.
find
Second.
a purpose.
So is it postponed to the next date?
Postpone, I'm interpreting that as a postponement to a date certain.
Correct. And the date would be the next council meeting, which is August 9th.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second for that. Is there any discussion?
Can I vote on this, since we're just tabling it?
I don't know if you need to, but
Yes, you can do that.
that's your choice.
Good.
Can we have roll call on that, please?
Councilmember Shevers.
Yes.
Seeley.
Abstain.
Davis.
Yes.
Oben.
Yes.
Mussmann.
Yes.
Kearns.
Yes.
Okay, so we have the amendment, and now we will postpone the second consideration vote until August 9th, and then we'll get that information from Chief out to everybody. Okay? All right, 7I, Councilmember Oberon.
Thank you, Your Honor. Have an ordinance for the first consideration.
Please read the title.
An ordinance amending Chapter 152 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Clinton, Iowa pertaining to smoke detectors.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Opening up for discussion. I think maybe we should just go down the line here. So let's start here. New single-family, two-family dwellings. I think A and B, from the discussion that we had last time, I don't think anybody had issues with A and B on the new things, correct? Is that my or C? So I'm interpreting that correctly?
Or E.
Right. I think E, yep, E was okay. So I think our discussion centers around the G paragraph. And I can already see that we would need to have an amendment for that 365 to match the ordinance that we just,
7:30.
yeah, 7:30. Boy. But I'll open up for discussion on this. Councilmember Oberon, you can start. Go ahead.
So I'll go ahead and, can I make a motion now to change that to 730? Is that the proper time now, or should we
You
wait?
can. I think, let's have discussion and see if there's anything else needs to be amended first, because then we could do an amendment for everything all in one shot. Is that fair? Everybody's okay with that? Hearing none, all right, we'll move.
Catching up.
What's that?
I lost my computer. I'm catching up.
Okay. So, open it up for discussion on letter G.
So essentially, this is saying exactly the same thing that was in the previous 7H item, but with the change of going from to 730 days. It's saying the exact same thing.
True, you're right.
That's why I said they tie together.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So we're basically, smoke detectors is following international code to a T, correct?
Check.
That's what we're,
Up
that's what we're
until
interpreting?
section G. On check.
I see. Yes. So section G would treat a lapsed rental as new construction. A two-year lapse. Two-year lapse as new construction versus allowing it to maintain its status as it was before the certificate lapsed. So I guess that's the discussion.
So if it's treated as a new rental, then it's got to be hardwired?
Yeah, new construction is hardwired.
New
and
construction.
interconnected.
New construction.
Yep.
Right. Where the international code does not require that. So if I have a rental house and then it lapses, and then someone else is going to rent it, and nothing else is changing, you're not doing any construction, you're not doing anything, you don't have to do the hardwired, because it wouldn't be a new dwelling. So this would be anything that lapses on the paragraph, anything that goes past the 365 days would be treated as new construction and would require hardwire interconnected.
Okay.
Well, I might as well bite the bullet.
Does that make sense?
Yes,
Well, yeah, you just said 365 units.
Oh, 730.
2 year.
Well, that hasn't been, yes, it was 730. It would be treated as new construction, yes.
So in everything that I've looked at, and I've read more about this than I ever want to again in my life, I feel like we are arguing over a fraction of a percent on safety, hardwired versus interconnected, sealed battery throughout the house. And so I would propose that we try to get the hardwired, sealed battery the way that we're going, because it feels like many people feel like that's the way to go. I mean, that's as safe, minus a fraction of a percent.
The
as a
hardwired sealed battery or just the 10-year sealed battery?
This
Okay.
10-year sealed battery is maybe a fraction of a percent, not as safe as a hardwired. So I'm
So-
drinking the Kool-Aid now.
So you're saying, so if I'm any existing residential structure that would, so for the 730 days,
I don't
right?
think it needs to be treated as new anymore.
It doesn't need to be treated as new, but the minimum standard is a 10-year sealed battery,
Yes,
is kind of what you're
that's
saying,
my proposal.
right?
Yes.
Okay.
You mean in lieu of the minimum standards that are in the
No.
International
The
Property
whatever
Maintenance
minimum
Code?
standards we have, but I think that, I'm not so sure that this needs to be treated as a new construction. If you're
Pat,
doing the 50% or more of interior construction, then it's treated as new. But if it just sat for 2 years and you got to put on a new roof, I think it's fine to go with an interconnected throughout as a rental.
No, it's 10-year sealed battery.
Yes, interconnected 10-year sealed battery.
Or whatever the code says.
Yes. Which, yes.
The code would require, so I think the state fire marshal is going to require 10-year sealed batteries, correct, Joel? Yes. And that starts when?
July 1st.
Okay, July 1st. And
Next year or just the
I
past
think
July
this
1st?
year. And I think it states that,
We'll double check that.
yep, it states that when your
believe it, we'll
existing alarm nears the end of its economic life and you need to replace it, they want you to use the 10-year lithium, which I think is a good idea because the tenants aren't taking the batteries out. And if they even last 7 years, that's a lot.
Here you go.
That's
Happy
only.
birthday.
Oh, thanks, dude.
More
you
than
got
you
some.
needed them.
It's more than $2.99.
But they don't talk to each other, but they will save your life.
Yeah. So, but these aren't wireless.
No.
No.
Well, they look like this. Yeah. Where'd you get them?
Costco.
Oh, nice. Why aren't they up in your house?
Because I have hard wires.
Do you?
Oh, yes, sir.
I actually need those. I'll buy them from
Do
you.
you?
Kidding.
Go ahead.
Ron, did you have?
I was going to have Joel come up. I had a question about
Okay.
what is it, the AFPD? But go ahead, Travis, go first, and then I'll get Joe.
Travis Leonard, 2328 North 8th Street. Good evening, Your Honor, council members. I guess I just have a question with G, where it talks about any existing residential structures undergoes a change in use from owner occupied to rental. So does that mean that every rental that I buy then, if you follow that, would require hardwired smoke detectors?
That's what we're debating, and whether or not to treat that situation as new construction or not.
Every rental you buy?
Like
I
if
mean,
he went and bought,
So like if I go buy a rental that's previously owner occupied, it would change, if you go by what was just mentioned earlier, it would change the purpose of it. So then that would be considered new construction, even though I haven't done any construction to the property. If I haven't opened up any walls, if I haven't done 50% of opening up any of the walls inside, it would still be considered new construction, even though I haven't done any work.
So the property would go from residential to rental?
Yes.
So that'd be the change in purpose you're talking about?
Yes. So at that point, would I still have to do, if you follow G, then would I be forced to still do hardwire smoke detectors versus following the International Property Maintenance Code, which states battery?
That's what we're talking about.
Yep.
yeah.
And so actually, if you remove section G, what Rhonda proposed would be required because of the fire marshal, and this section follows that. So the 10-year seal, now the wireless interconnection, I do not believe is a requirement, so that would be something that has to be added in as the additional language with the 10-year. Because they only are requiring a single station 10-year replacement, right? They're not requiring the interconnectivity, so that would be above and beyond code still, but that could be put.
But that the interwired connectivity is not in G, and it's not in the one that we just,
It is because it says considered new construction. So then the interconnected is in there.
okay, so in new construction, that's where the interconnected hardwired is required.
Just reverts to the code language.
The code language is
For new
just for
construction.
new,
Correct.
okay.
So this paragraph says if the rental permit lapsed for longer than that period, the 730, it would be considered new construction.
Right, and I'm saying because of the age of our homes in Clinton,
Right.
I am not sure that we need to go to the hardwired because the safety, to me, doesn't seem that different than a sealed battery interconnected, and I think we could get away with that. And it's as far as I'm concerned, from whatever I read, it's the interconnected that is saving lives. It's not whether it's hardwired or sealed battery.
Is it the interconnected or is it the two source? Having two source, the battery and the hard wire?
That's also part of it.
Well, if your power goes out, you're always going to have your battery. So
But it's still two sources.
No, the code doesn't talk about two sources, I don't believe. The residential
the
code.
battery is what you can't do without because that is your backup if you lose your power.
Right.
Well, if your battery's out, then your electric is still working.
Well, that's what.
Well,
That's why.
That's why you have to have
the 10-year battery.
Yeah.
Not necessarily. What if it is defective? What if the 10-year battery is
True.
defective?
That was
There's
in
a lot of what
some of
ifs.
those were in the report too.
Yeah.
They start chirping like the hardwired ones.
And just so,
I'm
yeah.
with the two source. That's just where I'm at.
Yeah.
Do you have hardwired at your house?
Nope.
That's hard.
Oh.
Yeah.
Can I get Chief to come up?
Sure.
Chief Joel. Now, I'm going to get these abbreviations wrong, so.
Okay.
The document that you sent out to everybody was the National Fire Protection Association,
Yeah,
and that was the study?
That was a study, correct.
Okay. And the one where it went by power source, I don't have it in front of me, but there was an area where it talked about,
Oh, Ron? Is this?
is that it?
That's a,
Well, I'm talking about the statistics that they had in
there's
there.
statistics in there. That's a written summary in the
That was
book
in
that
that
you're just talking
report,
about.
yeah, that was
Yeah.
in the PA research report. Under key findings, that was the front part.
Oh, okay. But what I was talking about, and they were talking about battery versus dual powered. And they had like 1,000 deaths. It was like 85% battery, or no, 65% battery if I remember right. And then they were talking about dual powered went down to 320 casualties.
Okay. I don't have those numbers memorized, but I had the report with me. If you,
I would say that, I would say that'd be quite a significance
See that one?
correct.
versus the two. Yeah, scroll down.
I believe it was an 18% difference between hardwired and just battery operated was in the summary of the.
Oh, slow down, you're faster than I am.
Did that study, that data was from up to
2000.
2018?
Yes.
Yeah.
Did it include sealed battery systems?
No.
No.
Okay.
No, and the numbers that I have, the battery per 1,000 people, there were 7.8 deaths. Any alarm took it to 5.9 per 1,000, and hardwired took it to 3.7 per 1,000.
Because they don't have the sealed batteries, because I don't think the sealed batteries were back in 2018. But the battery's a battery.
No,
No.
That's not true.
I'll disagree with you on that. I've done a lot of research myself, gone across the river to the fire group over there. Yeah, the 9-volt batteries, other than for backup purposes to hardwire, are junk.
Yeah.
Are junk. The 9-volt battery system. So if you're gonna go to a wireless system, you better be talking about. And I'm not even sure the lithium is actually the newest style, because there have been 2 different models put out that are not hardwired. So, but yeah, don't say any,
Well, all right.
because the 9 volts.
I agree, the lithium batteries are better
You'll
than
never
the
see me
regular
nod my
9
head
volt.
yes on that one.
But
would you go to
what the table I'm talking about is table 3. And it says home structure fires in which smoke alarms were present by smoke alarm power source. And it is from 2014 to 2018 annual averages. And it says battery only. Under civilian deaths, they have 1,000, and that's 65%. Under hardwired with battery backup, they're down to 320 at 21%.
Significant.
So I would say that'd be a significant difference.
I mean, you look at the whole code, and Matt, would you bring up the slide with the code, the Iowa residential code on the slideshow? If you look at the codes, they talk hardwired battery, every one of them does. Every current 2018 code, I don't care if you're talking property maintenance code, if you're talking international building code, they're all talking hardware. People smarter than me wrote those codes, including fire experts, including building construction experts. They wrote the codes. We just interpret the codes and enforce the codes. So when you're looking, you want to change it, the recommendation from the fire department is hardwire battery backup interconnected smoke detectors. That's the recommendation coming from the fire chief, Clinton, Iowa, for this community. That's anything else you want to do, you can do, but that's the recommendation from the fire department.
I guess my question is how come we're targeting rental properties with this code and not everybody? If it is so important, how come we're not targeting everybody? We're just focusing on rental properties.
New houses that are built have to have
Correct.
hardwired.
Right.
Full permit for a house for any interior remodel has to have hardwire smoke.
Why is that different with a landlord-owned property?
Chief Atkinson, I guess my question would be is why is it okay for the fire department to go out and put battery-operated smoke detectors in owner-occupied homes, but not rental properties? Because the fire department...
Can't talk when you're saying...
Go ahead. Sorry.
So we put the smoke detectors in residential battery-operated, they're not 10-year, they're calling them a different thing right now, long-term batteries, because that's the easiest way we can get people in compliance that need to be in compliance. We don't put them in rentals. Again, they're running a business, and we're not going to supply free smoke detectors to somebody running a business. They have the capability to fund smoke detectors. That's why we don't put them in rental properties. I don't think it's the fire department's job and firefighters' job to go to rental properties and put smoke detectors in because they don't want to spend the money to put smoke detectors in.
Okay, we're not going to argue it, though. Your question was answered. I'm not going to have you argue with fire chief at a council meeting.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, so the issue at hand here is the section G that we haven't really heard much from anybody on. Do you want to treat these situations as new construction, or do you want to revert and just follow the code? That's what the discussion is, if I'm correct, right? Is do we want to follow the code, or do you want to require these situations to be new construction, which would require hardwired interconnected? That's what we are trying to figure out.
So I'm going to do a process. We are requiring homes.
We do, yep. We
Try
would.
to require any building that's being remodeled.
Yeah.
That's being remodeled more than 50%, is that correct?
Correct. No matter what it is.
Right.
Correct.
So the only thing that we have left to cover for coverage of some kind, or any kind, would be apartments. Am I right?
It's rental structures that are new, like going from a single family to a rental, or a rental that has lapsed for the period of time that is determined in this paragraph.
Okay.
So those are the two that we're looking
So the period
at.
of time is actually adding in that part there too, so.
Correct. The period of time would add in there too. So if you bought my house from me and you were going to turn it into a rental, it'd be considered new construction. You'd have to follow. If you had that rental then, or if you had another house that lapsed for 730 days, 731, and you were trying to get the certificate back, it would have to be new construction back to hardwired, even if it wasn't before.
Okay.
So that's
Otherwise, it's all covered.
And kind of to catch her
Correct.
is, just to break it down for the crowd that we probably lost, but chapter 152 is this chart above. We've been talking about A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. That's all up here. You can see the red numbers. And so what we're talking about is if it's existing rental, converted, or vacant, now this will change to 730, then it would actually automatically go up to new single-family dwelling, follow International Residential Code, and require a commercial power source as primary and batteries backup. If it's an existing rental, just hanging out there, it's going to get a new permit, it slides right over to follow Iowa Admin Code, Chapter 661-210. We'd have to put a star next to this, because then we'd have to add in 10-year lithium batteries, unless that falls under the Iowa Admin Code of Chapter 6.
if the state fire marshal already put that in there, then we don't need to spell that out. Correct.
Yep. So just kind of simplifying it anyway in a chart form.
So really, we're two scenarios is what we're discussing. Two scenarios. Go ahead, sir.
I have a question about the length of days that a property sits vacant. The council recently said make it 730 days instead of 365. Do I understand correctly that a rental occupancy permit is valid for 2 years? Okay. So here's where it gets goofy. Let's say somebody gets a rental occupancy permit, 6 months later the owner dies, the estate does not want to deal with the property, they kick everybody out, and it's since vacant for 545 days. The rental occupancy permit lapses, and they got another 730 days before any of this stuff kicks in. That's 1,275 days that it sits vacant. Was that the intent?
Right.
I don't understand.
Do you think additional?
Is there a way to cancel the permit the day it becomes vacant, so then the 730 days would take effect? Because otherwise, that permit is still hanging on the books as vacant for 545 days under my scenario.
Well, under our vacant building ordinance, you would be required to register it as a vacant building.
Yep.
True.
Okay, that
Already
answers
taken
my
care of.
question.
Which would,
If they do.
which would take away the rental certificate.
Yes. But we
Okay,
could
so
probably go
that
back in
answers the
time.
question. There is another section somewhere that would take care of that.
Vacant building section,
So
yep.
we are only
We had a
talking
long
about-
discussion on that for a while too, didn't we?
And if they didn't do the vacant building, we could always go back and find out when that.
Yeah, you could
that
easily-
occurred.
Okay.
Correct,
So that
yes.
solves that. Very good. Thank
Sometimes
you.
the code staff has to trigger that, though, by going after the person and making them do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you do?
Okay, so back to the two scenarios. Do we have any other discussion on that?
Can I just say, I don't have any problem with Councilmember Kearns' idea, but it might make sense to wait until that becomes part of, if the sealed batteries become the new gold standard, and that's what we end up having in our updated codes.
Isn't it in place?
I would think it'd be better just to leave it the way it is, to defer to the current standards we've adopted. And as those change and we adopt new versions, and that comes into
You're missing
that.
the point here. This is implying new construction standards on existing properties. That is the hanging point.
Okay, I'm just saying it makes a lot more sense to have it neat and clean and go
Not
to the
all-
ordinances
Not all
instead
existing
of,
properties.
instead of putting in a new arbitrary idea that we want to have in there, and then, so it just isn't going to match the rest of the adopted.
So let's just say we got rid of section G. Let's just hypothetically say we got rid of section G. In a rental property that Travis Winter buys a house, he's gonna put tenants in it. Under current code, assuming the fire marshal now requires lithium batteries, he would have to put, following all the adopted codes, the international residential code, the building code, the property maintenance code, all of them, he would have to put in the lithium sealed units. They would not have to be hardwired, and they would not have to be interconnected. So that would be his requirement without section G. So section G is gone, that would be the requirement. Rhonda's proposals is the exact same thing, but interconnection. So if that's what wants to happen, section G needs to reflect that additional requirement for wireless interconnectivity amongst the 10-year units.
Just for reference, on the Kitty website, under Iowa, says effective July 1, 2022, smoke alarms will no longer be required to have a dual sensor ionization and photoelectric, and all battery-powered smoke alarms must contain a tamper-proof battery that lasts for at least 10 years.
Okay. Which is that? That's dual.
Yeah, and
Okay.
tenure.
So, that's from the Kitty website, which I'm assuming is accurate? Okay.
I'd be good. I just didn't have.
No, that's fine. I was just trying to find it because the question was out there, so.
And I want to point out one
Another thing from the report Ron was talking about in their key findings, I'm sure you saw this too, Bill, since you had to print it off. Missing or non-functional these were the top reasons for issues. Missing or non-functional power sources, including missing or disconnected batteries, dead batteries, disconnected hardwire alarms, or AC power issues, were the most common factors when smoke alarms failed to operate. And that's why I keep popping in my head, a sealed battery they can't remove alleviates this entire section of the key factors for issues, right?
Well,
I don't see that.
I'm going to disagree a little bit, because I think if you're going to remove any alarm from the ceiling, you're going to remove any alarm from
Yeah,
the ceiling.
yeah, you could. Unless
So,
you want require a
the
cage.
chirping bothers me, yank it out of the wall. If the chirping from
Yep.
a non-wired bothers me, I'm going to yank it out of the wall.
Yep,
Your tenants are going to do that.
Yep.
Sometimes tenants got to be held responsible too.
Yep.
So.
True. It's true. Okay.
Otherwise, there's a lot of chirping.
All right. So,
We've heard a lot of that.
going back,
That's right.
the two scenarios that we're talking about. Do we want to require the requirements of new construction, or do we want to just follow the code? So I guess at this point, if we have no other discussion, I'm either entertaining a motion to move this forward as it's written with the change of 730 days.
So is the proposal that you're making, Mayor, that you're suggesting is that
Well, I have two different motions that could be made. One would be to change this verbiage and go straight to the code and not require those to be new construction, or approved as it's written, where the requirement is the new construction in these scenarios with the change of 730 days instead of 365
But
to match.
Rhonda's request would require this to go to code, but require the interconnectivity. So there's three.
Okay.
Always got to muddy the water.
That's what her motion was.
I'll make a motion to leave G in as read, require the 365 days.
Okay, did Rhonda make a motion?
I thought so.
Lisa, do you have a motion recorded? Okay.
Would you like me to make my motion?
Well,
I'm
I need, I need someone.
I'm happy to, but Ron
I have a
just made one.
I have a motion and a second. I already have a motion and a second, I guess, for the ordinance first consideration as is. That's what I have. So we already have that one taken care of. So if there is an amendment, we need to make that motion for the amendment, whatever they are. Because Greg started that way, and I told him to hold off until we had the discussion in case there was other amendments in addition to the 730 days. Does that make
you're going to
sense?
have to make the amendments individually anyway, so.
Okay, so
So I move that we change the 365 days to 730 days.
okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to change that to 730 days. So for the record, we're matching the other ordinance that we just did that for. Is there any discussion on that?
This is the first reading of three,
Correct.
so we still have time to
Correct.
go
So are
forward.
you
But
voting on the amendment?
So, yep, I'm getting there.
Okay.
Any other discussion? I'm earning my money tonight, right? Okay. So can we have a roll call vote on the amendment to change that to 730 days, please?
Councilmember Shemmers.
Yes.
Seeley.
Abstain.
Davis.
Yes.
Oben.
yes,
Mussmann.
Yes.
Kearns.
Yes.
Okay, that motion passes to change to 730 days. Now, we still could vote on the original motion in a second for the rest of the paragraph as is, or if there is a motion to amend, I would entertain that now.
I would motion to amend
Okay?
that the paragraph stay, but we add interconnected sealed units instead of hardwired.
Yeah, hardwired is
It's
not
the
in
new
there.
Well,
construction.
but the new construction.
So you want to remove the requirements of the new construction, correct?
Yes.
And you're making the minimum standard,
Interconnected, sealed battery, whatever's top of the line today, or,
okay.
and it be treated not as new construction. Did I cover everything?
I'm trying to think how we
So,
word that.
are you saying, Rhonda, that you want to replace everything, you want to get rid of everything where it begins, shall be considered new construction for purposes of this section, and shall be made compliant with the smoke and carbon monoxide requirements of the codes applicable to new construction? You want to strike all of that out and replace it with the language about the sealed battery?
Yes.
Interconnected sealed 10
Interconnected sealed battery smoke
Yes.
alarms.
Yes.
And by the way, we had a wireless one interconnected that failed its inspection this week, FYI.
Well, you're going to have that.
Okay, we have that motion. I do not have a second.
second.
Okay, I do have a second. Is there any discussion on that?
And just to make sure, Pat kind of said it good, but I want to reiterate. For no more than 730 days shall be, for purposes of this section, smoke and carbon monoxide requirements shall be,
No, all of that's coming out, Greg.
all that's coming out, right?
And she's just replacing it with
yeah.
interconnected sealed battery smoke alarms.
Okay, that's what I wanted to make sure. That's what we're taking out, that two lines.
And then it'll say said compliance shall be a precondition, that last sentence stays.
Which is still, just FYI, it's still more strict than the code.
I know.
I know,
okay with
I'm
that.
just
I just want to, for clarification purposes, the definition of a interconnected 10-year sealed battery, so that we're all understanding what that means.
They have it in the fire code.
It is in the fire code?
Yeah.
But it's the ability for all the units that you put up to be able to interconnect by talking to each other, to include as, it's very similar to hardwired, but it could be RF or wireless, that when one unit goes down, your system doesn't stop chirping.
Yep, they all still will go off. Yep.
Because they got to tell you, or if you have an alarm go off in there, that'll notify all the alarms and get you up, because it could be in a place where no family is actually staying in the living. They're often in another part of the house, and that will notify the entire system. Because like this one I brought, for example, is a really good, highly recommended, but it won't talk to each other. It'll beep like crazy what room is, and you may not hear it if you're across the rest of the house. So the interconnected is the ability for each one of the smoke detectors to talk to each other.
Yes.
Right, but they don't have, which you're saying they don't have to be hardwired.
I'm saying they do
No,
not have
just
to be
interconnected.
Just
They could be
interconnected.
hardwired, but it's whatever the code is requiring. You can do RF, radio frequencies, or you could do wireless.
And 10-year battery.
In 10-year battery.
10-year
Sealed.
Sealed battery.
Sealed.
Well, a battery you can't take
You
out.
gotta-
Yes.
all right.
Okay.
But that is only on older properties. It's
Yes.
Yes.
Correct.
New construction or
You revert to the code.
New construction stays
remodeled,
hardwired,
stay the
or
same.
or remodeled over 50% is still staying hardwired. Yes.
Or permit hold.
Or
Yes.
permit pull.
Correct. Right. All right. So we all understand the motion in a second from Rhonda and Greg there. So we have to vote on this amendment as well,
Yes.
Yes.
correct? Check. Okay. Can we have a roll call vote on that amendment,
Just to
please?
clarify,
Oh,
this
sorry.
amendment is,
This amendment is the removing of that line there, for the new construction line, and stating that the minimum requirement would be interconnected, 10-year sealed battery. If a landlord chose to do or hardwired, they could still, but that's the minimum standard that would be allowed in those two scenarios.
Okay.
Does that
Come up with some draft language.
make sense?
And
You're gonna have to watch the tape.
Yep.
And we also have to go back to 155A and fix that with it too.
Oh,
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
that's okay.
Yep.
Any other discussion on that amendment? Okay, can we have roll call on the amendment, please?
Councilmember Shevers,
yes.
Seeley,
Abstain?
Davis,
No.
Ogren,
Yes.
Mussmann,
No.
Kearns.
Yes.
Fails.
Because it counts as a no.
Oh, counts as a no?
You do.
Abstained.
Oh, I count as
So
a
that
no?
failed.
Well, I mean, this is a good time to have a holistic conversation. Does Cody have a conflict or not? Because Ron doesn't, apparently. You know.
Okay, so that fails then.
Oh, I should have just left the room. Is that what it boils down to?
Well, it
No, it's an ordinance.
wouldn't have made any difference if you left. It would have, the vote would have been the same.
it's an
You only
ordinance.
had 3 and you need 4 votes, no matter what.
Oh,
On an
gotcha.
ordinance.
Gotcha. Oh, so now what?
So,
Somebody needs, who voted no needs to articulate what their objection
With a
was,
new
so we
motion.
can see if we can find another way. Otherwise,
otherwise it cannot
otherwise
be
it's gonna just say 720 days. It's gonna.
7:30. And it can't be brought back up until a new council is sat.
There wasn't enough.
Correct?
Or the same.
No,
Or-
that was just an amendment that was defeated.
Okay,
The
so-
ordinance is still more than alive.
So but you can't make another
But we
amendment
don't
to
have
it.
some.
No, you
Because
can.
it failed.
Someone.
Well, no. I mean, you can't make that amendment because it
Abstaining
failed.
Because I
Right.
thought we had a conflict.
Okay.
I counted
Unless
as a
somebody
no.
wants,
So-
somebody who's a no
Some
vote
abstain as counts
makes
as
a
a no?
motion
I
to
guess.
reconsider, or to reconsider.
Okay, so,
No, wait, first off, it takes 4 votes to pass.
Oh, so I don't
It
count as
doesn't
a
matter.
no.
I'm just
It
messing,
doesn't
I'm just
matter.
messing with him. I'm
Okay.
messing with code.
Oh,
Making a difference.
it
I
takes,
thought that was weird. All right.
Yeah, because we don't have Miss Nancy anymore, but you have to have 4.
because it's an
You'll have to
ordinance.
have 4.
Yep.
Because it's an ordinance.
Oh.
a resolution would have passed, correct? With that vote.
So just remember, this was just an amendment to the ordinance, and it doesn't defeat the ordinance. It just means someone can make a someone can either do a motion for reconsider, if on the winning side, which would be Ron or somebody like that voted no,
Or Eartha.
or someone could make a different motion right now that would pass.
What,
A different amendment,
The question
I mean.
is, what do you think you're achieving above, what are you achieving that's better than what was just proposed, I guess?
My decision is based on the fire chief. He's put in the work. He's made his recommendation, and I'm going with what he's recommended.
Okay. Ron?
Mine's based on the fact that, two power sources are better than one. I've seen, this is on the transportation side. I've seen so much new stuff come out that didn't work when it got to the destination, or it worked for a short time. Our manufacturing base out there for guaranteeing things is basically, we'll worry about it when it gets to destination if something's wrong with it. So that's the way our supply chain really works.
Well, and same can be said for the hardwired units. You know what I think is interesting is every year, once a year, you have a battery that's going to start chirping on a hardwired unit. So 7 times out of the life of that sealed battery, you run the risk of that tenant taking that down. And 7 times, and you only run that risk 1 time with the sealed battery.
But they still will come up short sometimes.
Oh yeah, that's why I said 7 years, because they're supposed to be 10. I'm saying 7. Yeah.
Well, you had, what, 5?
Yeah.
Yeah, but my system is 6 years old, so I'm sure they've come a long way since then.
Well, agreed. They've come a long way.
Can I ask a question of Councilman Schemers? You went and spoke to other experts in the area. Would you care to share anything that they told you?
Not really. No, I'm just joking. So, yes, I did, and I spoke to the people in the business. They work with KID and all these other all these other smoke detectors. And like I said, the 9-volt, they threw it out. They said, don't consider 9-volt at all. It's okay as a backup system for a hardwire. Then we went down the road, and I did sleepless hours of reading, and there are different types of sealed alarm systems. And there were some in the early days, and probably still some out on the market, that didn't work that well. And I know the term lithium was brought up a lot. Now, I'm not sure lithium was the good one to use. And maybe the state fire marshal would have probably has the exact wording on that. But there was a better unit that was out there. The one thing that was impressed on me that said it better be UL listed. If it's not UL listed, it should not fit anywhere in anybody's home. So, but they did say, as far as the type that talk back and forth, like a hardwired would do, they're as good as a hardwired. However, the failure rate is higher than a hardwired. So, while the technology is working, the possibility of a failure is not as accurate as maybe a hardwired would be. So.
Okay, so.
I mean, there's a possibility of failure in it. I understand that.
Yep. All right, so we have, I still have the original motion and second for the ordinance as written. I'm assuming I'm not going to get a reconsider motion out of either of you, which is fine. So we can vote on the original motion and second.
Well, we already had one pass, right?
We passed to 7:30. Or this can be postponed to a date certain and everybody can go back and think about it. I know we've been doing this for a long time, but that's a possibility as well. Or one of the no votes, if you have another proposal, you could make that motion as well.
The other one was postponed, so it may make sense to postpone this one as well.
After we
everybody
had
a
the
chance to
amendments
work
done, I
through it.
was going to offer that up, but I think we're at that point now, so.
I guess I'm just surprised because I feel like it's achieving the same level of a superior level of safety than what code's required. And I guess there's so many smart people that wrote all these codes, and you're sitting here saying, oh, we want to follow the codes, but we don't.
Because it reverts to the code. It's the same thing.
I believe Councilmember C is referencing that the code does not require interconnected. And the amendment that was made would have required
Still
interconnected.
gone above and beyond, yes.
Correct,
Yeah.
which would have still gone above the code as it's written. For clarification. Councilmember Oben.
I'll make a motion to postpone to date certain of the next council meeting so that we can talk more.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and second to postpone the vote until August 9th. Is there any discussion on that? Okay, can we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Summers.
Yes.
Seeley.
Abstain?
Davis.
No.
Oben.
Yes.
Mussmann.
No.
Kearns.
Yes.
Is that defeated as well, sir?
Yes.
Okay, so postponing is not going to happen. So then I will offer up a roll call vote on the original motion and second as the paragraph is written.
With 7:30.
With 7:30 as the amendment.
Councilmember Summers.
Yes.
Seeley.
Abstain.
Davis.
Yes.
Oben.
Yes.
Yes.
Mussmann. Kearns.
No.
Wait, what just happened?
It's 4.
So the first reading passed the language as written with the amendment of 7:30. That's what just passed.
No, okay. Okay.
First consideration.
4-1. First
It actually
Okay.
catches up to the other one.
First consideration.
Votes are confusing me here.
Yes.
First consideration. So we.
Well, so there's more time.
There's 2 more considerations. So, just for reference, we had the amendment that passed for 7:30. We had 2 amendments defeated because they didn't have enough votes. This first consideration passed as written with the amendment of 7:30 for the first consideration. There are 2 more considerations, and as Matt just said, it did catch up to the other ordinance now, and next reading will be the second consideration on both ordinances.
Both of them have 3 considerations, correct?
Correct. Yep. And we're not gonna suspend the rules. We're gonna do all 3 of them in the meetings. We're not gonna change. We're not gonna do that, or I'm not gonna entertain it, I guess. Okay, moving on to unfinished business. 6AF.
I'll make a motion to approve it.
Okay, we have a motion to approve AF.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Can we have roll call on 6AF, please?
Councilmember Summers.
Yes.
Seeley.
Abstain.
Davis.
Yes.
Oben.
Yes.
Mussmann.
Yes.
Kearns.
I don't even know what 6AF is.
It's the dredging.
It's nothing.
Oh, yes.
Oh, wow. Councilmember Seeley needed to abstain, and that's why he pulled it. Okay, all right. Did you vote? Councilmember Kearns?
Yes.
Yes, okay. All right. Councilmember Seeley.
Thank you, Your Honor. I move we adjourn to 5 p.m. August 9th, 2022.
We are adjourned. I will not entertain an amendment on adjournment. Yep. Okay, we're going to take a minute, and then we'll be back.
Yeah, I'm gonna get that. I might just bail too, because I don't think I can do this. Because I gotta travel in the morning, get back and forth there. Yeah, I think I'm gonna go home and go to bed. There you go. After the flag. What do we do?
Oh, that's it?
Because when I copied mine on,
So it's on top of what we just had?
Well, I pulled this
Okay.
right off of what you said. This is exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
I can tell. I don't know about it, but it's just you guys are reading each other's minds. My thing is, in internet, you want redundancy. Okay, you want if one breaks down something, you want that. And that's pretty much the way a lot of security systems are set up. You want that. That's the same thing with rental. You want that backup. And rental building is a rental is a business. And you have more control over what happens to the house than you do the internet. That's exactly what I'm saying. I mean, the biggest problem is
They put you in a penalty box so you can't stream because you like use too much? Well, did the ghost come out at City Hall? You probably saw Bill wandering around down here. He was just sitting in his seat. What?